Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Legendary Aspects. Today we're going to be going over an aspect which is, I think this is a recent addition, but this is the 1.22 version. And this is aspect of Audacity. The Audacity aspect is when there are at least 5 close enemies, stun them for, and it's between 2 to 4 seconds. This can occur only once every 20 seconds. Now, what is close? Well, close means a very specific distance. So let's use the Kyovashad waypoint here as an example. See if I can center myself very precisely. Close is essentially the distance between your character and this ring right here. So the inner part of this ring, all the way around in a circle, indicates close. Anything outside of this ring is considered distant. So outside of here is distant, inside of here is close. So if you have the monsters near you, so at least 5 close enemies within a close distance of you, you will stun them. And this can be easily seen, so you can, like teleport into a group of monsters on a sorceress, or you can pull a bunch of monsters in towards you. Whatever method you use to try and get the monsters in towards you, or even if you just run into a group of monsters, it will stun all the monsters around you. It's kind of an interesting defensive mechanic, simply because it's going to obviously stun lots of monsters, but it also goes off automatically, and it goes off automatically all the time. It does, however, have a maximum, a minimum of time that it is allowed before it can go off again, which is 20 seconds. So you get 1 free stun for 4 seconds every 20 seconds to all monsters that are within range. Now, this can be very interesting if you pair it up with something like the Ring of Umbral, which I don't know if I have one of those on this character, but the Ring of Umbral allows you to gain essence, or your primary resource, whenever you damage or crowd control an enemy. Well, think about it like this. If I'm using the aspect of Audacity, then every single time it goes off, if there's multiple monsters within range, I can get potentially 4 resource from those particular monsters as I crowd control them per monster. So if there's like 10 monsters, that's like 40 resource that I can gain every single time this goes off. It's not exactly a terrible aspect. Also, there are certain characters that can take advantage of stunning. So the more times you stun, the more times you can get damage potentially. The Sorceress is one of these. She has a passive that allows her to dish out free lightning damage every time she stuns a target. So it could be interesting for her from that perspective to give her basically free stuns that are going off that can potentially give her free damage. The aspect of Retribution also gives you a multiplier to monsters that are stunned, which is very nice. On top of this, stuns also give fairly good stagger to bosses, so even if it's not potentially dishing out all that much, like actual crowd control damage, if you do have 5 or more enemies around you within a close time, some of the bosses do have adds, then it will stun them and give you a little bit of stagger on the boss as well. It's an interesting aspect, and this particular aspect you can gamble for. Let me pull up the Diablo 4.life gambling tool here, and we go to Audacity. And as you can see, it's best gambled on boots. It is available on helmet, chest armor, gloves, boots, shield, and amulet. But in my opinion, if you're going to utilize this, it's probably best used on the boots, unless you have something better to put there, because the boot slot isn't really all that amazing anyway, and it's basically just a free stun that you can have access to for, for whatever reason. As for boots, it is best gambled on the Druid, because the Druid has the least number of competing aspects on the boot slot, but you can still gamble it on Barb, Rogue, and Sorcerer. However, the Necromancer is like the worst in terms of chances to get this aspect, so you might, if you've got multiple characters, maybe hop off the Necro and gamble it on somebody else. He just has a lot of boot aspects, and that's really the issue. I think this is an interesting one. It definitely seems like something that you could utilize on specific characters, but the thing is that I'm not really sure if it's better than maybe some other options. The one character that I was thinking that could get the most benefit out of it is the Lightning Sorceress, basically like Chain Lightning, Ball Lightning, Charged Bolt, etc., because there is some pretty nice stun mechanics with this particular character. You could also utilize it on a bleed barbarian because there is the aspect of skull crushers aspect, I believe it's called, or skull breakers, which deals your bleeding damage to the enemy every time you stun them. So it could be just a way that you would have an automatic stun coming in and dishing out your bleeding damage. But the one that I was thinking of specifically is just Shocking Impact, which is every time you stun an enemy, you deal 2,000 to 2,498 lightning damage to them, which means that this would act as an AoE damage effect for this particular character. So if you have this aspect, and you have the aspect of the Audacity, and you walk into a group of monsters, no matter how many there are, as long as there are 5 or more, you will stun all of them and dish out lightning damage to all of them, which is rather interesting. It's definitely one of those aspects that I've taken a little bit of time and I've looked at and I've tried to decide whether or not I really wanted to utilize them. And sometimes I work it into a build. And sometimes there's just a better option. Like, for instance, even on the Barbarian, which I was talking about earlier, there is an option that called the aspect of anemia, which makes it so that direct damage against an enemy can potentially stun them, which sounds a little bit better, honestly, than a stun that only goes off once every 20 seconds. Even if it is AoE, I could potentially still get a pretty nice effect with the aspect of anemia instead. I think that's pretty much it for this aspect. It's a pretty simple one. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about the aspect of Audacity. And as always, keep watching.